In the two-story colonial house in Maple Grove neighborhood, 74-year-old Eleanor Hayes sat at the antique desk in her living room at 2:15 a.m. In front of her were documents that had emerged from missing military archives 6 months ago and were finally declassified, Admiral Robert Hayes' Secret Service files. In their 35 years of marriage, Robert had never spoken about Operation Neptune Shield, because he couldn't. Now Eleanor was learning that her husband had managed one of the most critical naval intelligence operations of the Cold War era. The files contained code-breaking, spy evacuations, neutralizing enemy agents. Robert wasn't just a Navy officer, he was also a national security hero. Eleanor felt pride as she turned through the pages, until she heard the metallic sound from the front door lock. Lock-picking sound. Professional. Silent. Eleanor's naval intelligence training immediately kicked in. This wasn't coincidence. These files had been declassified 6 months ago, and now someone was trying to access them. But Eleanor Hayes wasn't just a grieving widow. She was the same Naval Intelligence commander who had helped plan Operation Neptune Shield. She had worked with Robert on classified missions from 1987 to 1995, identified enemy agents, conducted counterintelligence operations. Eleanor quickly gathered the documents and put them in the hidden safe, behind the wall of what Robert had called the collection room 30 years ago. Footsteps were coming from the stairs. 3 men. Light. Coordinated. Professional movement patterns. Eleanor quietly moved to the kitchen, not to make tea, but to open the chest that Robert called garden supplies, but was actually tactical equipment. Tonight she would protect her husband's legacy and national security secrets. And these men were about to learn why the Navy had given her the call sign Razor. Smash that subscribe button if you're obsessed with badass military widows, classified operations, and home invaders who picked the wrong house. Was Eleanor just a grieving widow or a Navy intelligence legend protecting national secrets? What was Operation Neptune Shield and why are people killing to get those files? Drop your wildest theories below and destroy that like button. Every like tells us you want more insane stories about military families who never stop serving. For 5 years since Admiral Robert Hayes' death, Eleanor had been living the quiet life of a military widow. The neighbors knew her as the sweet woman who tended her garden, volunteered at the library, and kept to herself in the beautiful colonial home she'd shared with her husband for 3 decades. What they didn't know was that Eleanor Hayes had never been just a military spouse. She had been Commander Eleanor Hayes, Naval Intelligence, with her own distinguished career in counterintelligence operations, code-breaking, and threat analysis. Eleanor's marriage to Robert hadn't just been a love story, it had been a partnership between 2 of the Navy's most effective intelligence officers. Together, they had run operations that remained classified even after both their deaths were supposed to have ended their service. But tonight, as Eleanor opened Robert's tactical equipment cache, she realized that her service had never truly ended. The lock-picking sounds from the front door were professional, someone with training and experience. The movement patterns she'd observed suggested military or paramilitary backgrounds. This wasn't a random break-in targeting an elderly widow. This was a targeted operation seeking specific intelligence materials. Eleanor activated the secure communication system that Robert had installed throughout the house, ostensibly as a medical alert system but actually designed to contact emergency services and former intelligence colleagues if their home was ever compromised. The message she sent was coded in a way that would be meaningless to civilian responders but immediately recognizable to intelligence personnel: Neptune compromised. Razor active. Within seconds, she received a response that chilled her: multiple Neptune widows targeted. Pattern confirmed. Defensive authorization granted. Eleanor understood. This wasn't just about her or Robert's files. This was a systematic operation targeting the wives of deceased intelligence officers who might have access to classified materials or knowledge. But whoever was orchestrating this operation had made a critical error. They had assumed that military wives were simply dependents who happened to have access to sensitive information. They had no idea they were targeting trained intelligence officers who had been partners, not dependents, in some of the Navy's most classified operations. Eleanor's house wasn't just the suburban home it appeared to be. Over 30 years, she and Robert had modified it to serve as both a comfortable family residence and a secure facility for handling classified materials. The medical alert system was actually a comprehensive communication and surveillance network. The accessibility modifications were tactical advantages disguised as senior living accommodations. The garden sprinkler system included defensive capabilities that could secure the property's perimeter. As the three intruders moved through the first floor, Eleanor used her knowledge of the house's modified systems to monitor their progress while preparing her defense. From the surveillance feeds, she could assess their capabilities: professional movement, military-style coordination, high-end equipment. These weren't opportunistic criminals. They were operators conducting a planned mission. But they were operating in an environment designed by intelligence professionals who had spent decades learning how to protect sensitive materials and eliminate threats. Eleanor activated the house's defensive protocols. To anyone monitoring from outside, it would appear that an elderly woman was dealing with a home security emergency. The reality was that a former Naval Intelligence commander was implementing tactical countermeasures against hostile operatives. The house's lighting system shifted to configurations that provided Eleanor tactical advantages while disadvantaging intruders unfamiliar with the layout. The ventilation system began distributing trace chemicals that would cause mild disorientation without permanent harm. The communication system started recording everything for intelligence analysis. Eleanor moved through her own home like a ghost, using passages and sight lines that she and Robert had designed specifically for this type of scenario. Her first stop was Robert's study, where she accessed the weapons cache hidden behind his naval commendation display. The cache contained equipment that had been carefully maintained and regularly updated, even during their supposed retirement. Eleanor selected items based on the tactical situation: non-lethal weapons for initial contact, lethal options for escalation if necessary, communication devices for coordination with incoming support. But her most important asset wasn't equipment. It was 30 years of experience in intelligence operations and intimate knowledge of every detail of the environment she was defending. The three intruders had expected to find a frightened elderly woman who could be easily intimidated into revealing the location of classified materials. Instead, they found themselves in a tactical environment that seemed to anticipate and counter their every move. Their leader, Marcus Petrov, was a former Spetsnaz operator who had been hired specifically because of his experience in acquiring sensitive materials from protected locations. He had successfully completed similar operations targeting the families of deceased intelligence officers across 3 countries. But the Hayes house was unlike any target he had encountered. The lighting seemed designed to create blind spots exactly where his team needed visibility. The floor plans didn't match the intelligence they'd been provided. The security systems appeared to be actively working against them rather than simply sounding alarms. Most unsettling, Petrov began to realize that they were being observed and tracked by someone with professional-level capabilities. Team leader to base, Petrov whispered into his communication device. Target location has unexpected security measures. Recommend immediate extraction. The response was immediate and uncompromising: negative. Mission priority Alpha. Acquire materials and neutralize any witnesses. Eleanor, monitoring their communications through the house's surveillance system, understood that this had escalated beyond burglary to assassination. These operatives had been ordered to kill her after obtaining Robert's classified materials. That changed the tactical situation completely. Eleanor activated her emergency signal to former colleagues, but she also shifted from defensive to offensive operations. This was no longer about protecting materials, this was about eliminating threats to national security. Her first target was the operative positioned near the main staircase. Eleanor used the house's ventilation system to approach his position undetected, then employed techniques she'd learned during her intelligence career to neutralize the threat silently and efficiently. 1 down. 2 to go. As Eleanor moved through her house eliminating threats, she reflected on the operation that had brought these killers to her door. Operation Neptune Shield hadn't ended with the Cold War, it had evolved into ongoing counterintelligence efforts that protected American assets and operations worldwide. Robert's death 5 years ago hadn't closed the file on Neptune Shield. It had simply transferred responsibility to the surviving officers who had intimate knowledge of the operation's details and ongoing implications. Eleanor realized that the systematic targeting of intelligence widows wasn't about financial gain or random violence. It was a coordinated effort by foreign intelligence services to eliminate the remaining institutional knowledge of operations that still posed threats to enemy networks. By killing the widows and acquiring their husbands' materials, hostile forces were attempting to blind American intelligence to ongoing threats and operations. But they had underestimated the women they were targeting. Eleanor hadn't been a dependent spouse who happened to have access to classified information. She had been an active participant in developing and implementing the intelligence operations they were trying to compromise. The second operative discovered this when he attempted to access Robert's study and found himself facing someone who knew exactly how to exploit every weakness in his approach and training. Eleanor's neutralization of the second threat was textbook intelligence work, efficient, professional, and designed to provide maximum information about the operation targeting her and other military families. 2 down. 1 to go. Marcus Petrov realized that his carefully planned operation had become a survival situation. 2 of his team members had been eliminated by someone with professional-level training and intimate knowledge of the target environment. The elderly widow he had expected to intimidate was actually a trained operative who was systematically hunting his team through her own home. Petrov's training told him to abort the mission and extract immediately. But his orders were clear: acquire the Neptune Shield materials and eliminate all witnesses, regardless of tactical complications. He made the decision to escalate to full offensive operations, using explosives and heavy weapons to breach the house's defensive systems and force a confrontation with whoever was protecting the target materials. Eleanor monitored his preparations through the house's surveillance system and realized that Petrov was willing to destroy the entire property to accomplish his mission. This confirmed her assessment that the operation was being directed by foreign intelligence services with national security objectives rather than criminal organizations with financial motives. She activated the final defensive protocol that she and Robert had designed for exactly this scenario: total facility security lockdown with automated defense systems that could operate independently until military backup arrived. The house transformed from a residential property into a secure intelligence facility. Blast shutters sealed windows and entrances. Communication systems established direct links to Navy Intelligence Command. Automated systems began documenting everything for post-incident analysis. Eleanor positioned herself in the secure communications room that she and Robert had built in their basement, disguised as a hobby workshop but actually designed as a command center for intelligence operations. From this position, she could coordinate with incoming military support while maintaining tactical control of the defensive systems throughout the house. When Petrov attempted to breach the facility using explosive charges, he triggered automated countermeasures that had been designed to stop foreign intelligence operatives from acquiring sensitive American military secrets. The confrontation that followed demonstrated why Eleanor Hayes had earned the call sign Razor during her naval intelligence career, and why foreign operatives should never underestimate the wives of American intelligence officers. As Navy intelligence personnel arrived to secure the scene and extract Eleanor, the full scope of the operation targeting military widows became clear. Agent Sarah Chen, Eleanor's former colleague from Naval Intelligence, briefed her on the intelligence they had gathered from similar attacks across the country. "Eleanor, we've confirmed 17 targeted attacks on intelligence widows over the past 2 years. All Navy, all with husbands who had access to Cold War operations that remain classified." Eleanor reviewed the tactical analysis while Navy security personnel processed the scene. "Sarah, this isn't random targeting. Someone has comprehensive intelligence on Neptune Shield personnel and their families." "Agreed. We believe there's a mole in the intelligence community providing operational details to foreign services. Someone with access to personnel files and operational histories." Eleanor studied the communication devices recovered from the eliminated operatives. These aren't standard criminal equipment. This is military-grade surveillance and communication gear. Whoever is running this operation has significant resources and professional capabilities. Agent Chen nodded grimly. Eleanor, we need your help. You and Robert were central to Neptune's SHIELD operations. You have institutional knowledge that could help us identify the mole and shut down this operation. Eleanor looked around the home she had shared with Robert for 30 years, now damaged by the defensive systems they had installed to protect exactly the kind of materials that had nearly gotten her killed tonight. Sarah, I've been retired for 15 years. I was looking forward to a quiet life honoring Robert's memory. Eleanor, Robert's memory is exactly why we need you. These operations are trying to undo everything you both accomplished. The networks you disrupted, the agents you identified, the threats you neutralized, all of that is being systematically compromised. Eleanor made her decision with the same tactical clarity that had defined her intelligence career. Sarah, I'm back on active status. What do you need me to do? 6 months later, Eleanor Hayes stood in a secure briefing room at the Pentagon, addressing a joint task force of Navy intelligence officers, FBI counterintelligence specialists, and NSA analysts. Her investigation into the network targeting military widows had uncovered a sophisticated foreign intelligence operation that had been running for over 5 years, systematically acquiring American classified materials and eliminating personnel who could compromise their activities. The operation codenamed Widow Harvest was being directed by a combination of Russian SVR and Chinese MSS operatives, Eleanor reported to the task force. They identified Cold War intelligence personnel whose classified work remained relevant to current operations, then targeted their surviving spouses for elimination after acquiring sensitive materials. She activated the presentation system, displaying intelligence gathered during her months of active investigation. We've identified 23 attacks, with 17 successful eliminations and 6 attempted attacks that were prevented by enhanced security measures. The common factor was access to Operation Neptune SHIELD materials and related counterintelligence operations. FBI Director Martinez leaned forward. Mrs. Hayes, how were they acquiring such detailed intelligence on our personnel and their families? Eleanor's expression was grim. Through a mole in the intelligence community. Someone with access to personnel files, operational histories, and current security protocols. She clicked to the next slide, showing a photograph that made several people in the room gasp. Deputy Director James Morrison, Naval Intelligence. 30-year career, access to all Neptune SHIELD materials, and comprehensive knowledge of personnel and their families. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Morrison had been present at several briefings about the Widow attacks, had been involved in developing security measures to protect potential targets. Morrison has been providing foreign intelligence services with everything they needed to systematically eliminate institutional knowledge of operations that continue to threaten their current activities, Eleanor continued. The good news is that our counterintelligence operation has provided enough evidence to ensure Morrison's conviction and to identify his foreign handlers. The bad news is that we don't know how much classified material has been compromised or how many operations have been exposed. Admiral Rodriguez, Eleanor's former commanding officer, asked the obvious question, Mrs. Hayes, what's your recommendation for moving forward? Eleanor had spent 6 months preparing for this moment, developing a comprehensive strategy that would protect remaining intelligence personnel while rebuilding the capabilities that had been compromised. Admiral, I recommend immediate implementation of Operation Shield Wall. A comprehensive security program for military families with classified access. Enhanced protective measures, regular threat assessments, and most importantly, recognition that military spouses are often active participants in intelligence work rather than simply dependents who happen to have access to sensitive information. She looked around the room at faces she had worked with for decades, people who understood the sacrifices required to protect national security. We also need to acknowledge that retirement from intelligence service doesn't mean retirement from intelligence threats. The knowledge and experience of our personnel remains valuable, and vulnerable, long after they leave active duty. Admiral Rodriguez nodded approvingly. Mrs. Hayes, are you prepared to lead the implementation of Shield Wall? Eleanor thought about the quiet retirement she had been enjoying, about the peaceful life she had built in honor of Robert's memory. Then she thought about the 17 military widows who had been killed because foreign intelligence services had underestimated the commitment of American military families to protecting national security. Admiral, I'm prepared to serve as long as American military families need protection. Fr. 2 years later, Eleanor Hayes stood in Arlington National Cemetery at Robert's gravesite, but she wasn't alone. Surrounding her were dozens of military widows, children of deceased intelligence officers, and active-duty personnel who had been protected by the Shield Wall program. The program had evolved beyond simple security measures to become a comprehensive network that recognized military families as continuing assets to national security rather than simply dependents who needed protection. Eleanor had discovered that retirement from active duty didn't mean retirement from service. It meant finding new ways to use experience and knowledge to protect the people and values that military service was designed to defend. Robert, she said quietly, placing flowers on his grave, the network tried to destroy what we built, but they just made it stronger. Agent Sarah Chin approached, carrying a classified briefing folder. Eleanor, we've got another situation. Defense contractor families are being targeted for acquisition of classified materials. Eleanor looked at the folder, then at the network of military families who had gathered to honor their loved ones and protect each other. Sarah, Shield Wall is ready to expand operations. Military families protect each other, it's what we do. As they walked away from the cemetery, Eleanor reflected on the lesson she had learned during the most dangerous night of her retirement. Military service is a lifetime commitment that finds new expressions as circumstances change. Some people serve their country on foreign battlefields. Others serve by protecting the families and communities that make military service meaningful. Eleanor Hayes had learned to do both, and in the process, had discovered that the most important battles are often fought not in distant countries, but in suburban homes where military families live quiet lives while remaining ready to defend the values they had sworn to protect. The greatest victory wasn't eliminating the foreign operatives who had threatened her home. It was building a network that ensured other military families would never face those threats alone. Because military families never truly retire from service, they just find new missions worthy of their skills, their experience, and their unbreakable commitment to protecting the people they love and the country they served. Eleanor Hayes had found her final mission, ensuring that the phrase, military dependent, would be recognized as the contradiction it had always been. Military families weren't dependents. They were force multipliers. And Eleanor had built a network that would protect them, support them, and utilize their capabilities in service of national security for generations to come. The Shield Wall was stronger than any individual threat, because it was built from the combined strength of military families who understood that service never ends, it just evolves to meet new challenges.